Hello and welcome back to the Marketing Chat Room. I'm Kayla Bryant here today with Daniel Méndez. He is the founder of Comms Jobs, which is a really cool group he's going to talk about with us today. They have a little over 3,300 members right now in 23 countries. And then he's pretty LinkedIn famous also with about 17,000 followers. Today we're going to be talking about the power of online communities and networking, which makes so much sense. Welcome, Daniel. Super happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited about the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. So your journey is a little bit unique and I think inspiring. And I'd love for you to kick us off by talking a little bit about your journey from journalism in Chile to corporate communications in the US and how that kind of propelled and maybe even necessitated the journey that you've been on with networking and LinkedIn and building this community.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that question. So I'm originally from Chile. I was born there and lived there until I was 27. Yeah, 28. Um, and everything was really unexpected. Honestly, I growing up in Chile, it's a very small country in the very south of South America, and there's really a lot of isolation there because of the ocean and the Andes. So you kind of feel a little bit like very um, attached to that land, if you will. Like I never really thought about moving or like exploring other opportunities outside of that country until I met my wife. So my wife is she's American and she was teaching in Chile at that point. And so we met there. And at that time, I didn't speak English. She didn't speak Spanish. So we both had to figure it out. And so that's why in 2011, I started speaking English. Um, and and then we ended up getting married, and having kids, and that's when we started, uh, wondering about relocating to the U.S. And at the end of 2015, we decided to take that leap of faith and relocated from Chile to the U.S. And one of the things that when you're relocating, you always think about your friends and the food that you like and your family and having all of those things that make home, right? um but you never really think about your professional network. That is normally an afterthought because when you grow up in a community and you go to work and you study and you have classmates, you have coworkers, you have your first boss, you have your customers, you are naturally building a network, and it's kind of second nature. You never do it like very consciously, right? But when you relocate and move into a new community, in my case, a new country, with a different language and with a lot of different industries that don't exist in my original country, I found myself, you know, kind of overwhelmed by the fact that I didn't have anyone to advocate for me or help me get my foot in the door in the companies that I wanted to work at. So it was kind of like um, a big realization that I had to rebuild my network and I had to do it quickly because we relocated here on our own. So I needed a job, she needed a job, we needed to get our life together again. Uh, and that's when my journey, hardcore networking started.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And it is unique because not everyone, moves and starts a brand new career from a completely different country with a different language. But at the same time, a lot of people relocate just, to a nearby city or a different state. And it's a similar journey. Yours is a bit more complex for sure. But I think a lot of people find themselves in similar situations like that where they're
Well,
kind of lacking a professional community.
Definitely, and I think that's why my story has resonated with so many, because especially here in the U.S., like there's a lot of relocation within the country, because every state is like a different country, really. Um, and even moving from one coast to the other, or moving into the middle of the country, or north and south, everything makes a big difference. There's a lot of cultural differences. Um, there's a lot of lifestyles, and different industries. And telling my story, I feel like has resonated with a lot of people because you know rebuilding a network is not easy. It requires a lot of dedication. It requires a lot of consistency, and again, it's not something that comes naturally, as it would happen when you're growing up. Like, you're naturally making friends, you're naturally having neighbors, you're naturally having coworkers, classmates, whatever you want. But when you go, to another community, then you kind of have to start all of that from scratch, right? And that's what I started doing. As I mentioned, in 2015, my first approach to networking, because I didn't really know a lot of people here, was through LinkedIn. Um, and at that time, LinkedIn didn't really have the ability to follow people. You had to connect with them, to be able to see their content, engage in conversations and all of that. So that was, something that I think helped me a lot, because to be able to connect with people that didn't know me, didn't know anything about me, no one, I was not related to them in any way, right? I had to, uh, completely rebuild my brand, and get my story together, get my value proposition together, and really think about how you are going to approach those conversations. So I started connecting with a lot of people, and I was very intentional about focusing on people that were in my field of corporate communications and PR. Um, so at some point, I think by 2020, I started realizing that everything that I was seeing, 5 years in, it was communications content. I was seeing a lot of openings, job openings. I was seeing a lot of, networking opportunities, professional development courses, hot takes in different industries and areas of our field. So I thought that it would be good to start sharing that, and it was kind of accelerated by the fact that the company I was at that point went through a big reorganization. And a lot of colleagues were asking me, "Well, you're really good at networking in LinkedIn, but can you help me with it? Like, I've been with the company 15, 20 years. I haven't been in the market for so long. I don't even know where to start. I don't even know how companies are interviewing these days." So I said, look, I'm seeing a lot of content, a lot of opportunities, and maybe I'm going to start sharing them through this hashtag comms jobs. And something that started, really intended to be for my close network and coworkers at that point, started gathering a lot of attention from folks outside of my network that started connecting with me, and started, it really resonated with people. There was definitely a gap there. And fast forward to today, as you mentioned, Comms Jobs is now a huge community, um, that has been naturally linked to my profile, but also now we have an actual group, where people can connect, and that one, it's close to 3,300 members. And you mentioned the 23 countries. Um, I realized about that when I put together a program to help early career professionals to connect with mentors. And I put out a call, like, hey, through Comms Jobs, I would love to connect people that want to mentor others, so that we can have a database, and then folks that are looking for a mentor can go check it out and connect with those people. And we got more than, I think we're close to 300 people that raised their hands, and they were willing to be mentors to others. And then I asked for their location, just to get a sense of, where people were coming from. And that was it. 23 countries, which was mind blowing to me. And And it's been fantastic to see that some folks, in Italy are connected with people in California, or we have people from Portugal that connected with someone in Florida, and currently have a mentoring relationship. So those are the type of things that or I'm trying to enable through comms jobs, and definitely has been very well received by the community.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think that a lot of people out there, and it sounds like maybe particularly in your industry, which we can get into a little bit too, are looking for just kind of support and people that they can both lean on and learn from, but also people that they can kind of like ask questions of and vent to and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think people are really looking to connect with others, like genuinely. And I mean, this is very anecdotal and probably something very personal, but I started feeling that way after the pandemic. Like we were just away from each other for so long that as someone that tends to feed from people's energies, and be in an environment where you can hang out and you can like share stories and laugh and have fun. It was suddenly just taken away from us. Like a lot of people had that environment when they were at work, for example. Others had it within their communities with schools, or others had it by participating in different activities like gyms, or you name it. All of that was gone, like from one day to the other. So I think people are now really really wanting to get back to that connection. And it has been really heartwarming to see. Like it's really fulfilling to realize that every time that we have a networking event or one of the virtual hangouts that we host monthly through comms jobs, or the conversations that we have on a daily basis through the group, people are filling a void, like that. They're connecting with each other. They're really building strong relationships, and in many ways, because of the focus of this work was really into connecting communication professionals with opportunity. A lot of them are going through a very lonely and isolating process of job transition, right? Like looking for another opportunity or connecting to try to pursue their new opportunity, and that is very isolating. So really building this community and connecting people with each other has been very therapeutic for so many. But at the same time, I think we go back to the very core of what we do as communicators, which is connecting with people at a very human level, understanding emotions, understanding really basic human needs, right? And I think that that's why it has resonated so much with members of the community.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, that's all really innate to being a communications professional, all of those things that come along with it. And I'm sure that it's challenging. I know, very similar in the marketing space. It can be really hard, even if you're working for a pretty big company and you're on the comms team or the marketing team. Sometimes you're the only one on the team, or your team is really small, or your team is, spread out all over the globe or the country. So I'm sure that people find a lot of value in that during
Yeah,
the job search and after.
that's exactly right. I mean, I think there's also, I mean, I think we're in a very different space than we were probably 10, 15 years ago. There's better
Yeah.
understanding of what marketing and corporate communications do, and how they add value to companies. But also, there's still a lot more to do. Like a lot of teams, as you said, and there are so many of them in the community, uh, are doing external, internal comms. They're doing thought leadership, executive communications, investor relations, and all of that. Under just one person band, right? And maybe sometimes some support from agencies, and it's tough. There's a lot of expectations. There's a lot of misunderstanding of how can we drive value, how can we demonstrate that value through metrics and data. And that's something that has definitely been really helpful for folks, to connect with each other. It's like, hey, I'm doing, I'm leading a let's say a communications function for a biotech, and I'm the only person there, and I have one contractor that is helping me with content creation. That's it. And then you connect them with someone else that it's in a similar situation, and they can really help each other, in don't reinvent the wheel. Like, here's a bunch of resources that I have access to. Let's share here and there. So that's super valuable. But also another thing that I love that it's happening too is that there are so many other communities similar to comms jobs, right? That starting popping up, and became visible to so many, including me. And now I'm a member of those communities as well. And they're helping more like niche areas, and
Mhm.
still, like bringing people together, and that is so core, right?
Yeah.
And so helpful for folks that are leading a one person band.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's really cool. It seems like you maybe started a little trend there, which is awesome. And I love to see people collaborating and working together in ways that might not have been accessible to them otherwise. Do you have any specific strategies that you used to kind of create and curate such an engaged and intentional audience?
So something that I think has resonated with many is that I always say that no one has time to network, so you have to make time to network, right? Like,
Uh-huh.
it doesn't come naturally, and that's why I always say, you have to be very intentional, very dedicated, and consistent. And something that I started again 10 years ago, when I came to the US, was to dedicate my lunchtime on Fridays to connect with someone I didn't know, or someone that I haven't seen in a while, or someone that I may want to work in the future and just want to get on their radar, and try to enable those conversations, right? So that was one of the tactics that I used, during the time that I was trying to connect with people in LinkedIn when you didn't have the ability to follow them, right? Um,
Right.
and I've been lucky that people have been very receptive to that. And 10 years in, like, I continue to do that every Friday, and schedule at least one call with someone that I don't know. These days is a lot, people that I can help. And has been really fulfilling, and something that I'm so glad I started doing. And I always encourage people to keep doing that, because one of the things that people don't understand is that you need to make friends before you need them. You need to cultivate trust and credibility and relationships when you're in a good position, because when you're in a bad position, you can establish the same level of trust, credibility, and really connect with people at that level. And so I would say that that's one of those tactics that has worked really well for me, and has allowed me to just get to know so many people, right? And so they can know me as well. The other thing
Yeah.
that, not sure if it's a tactic necessarily, but I think it's just core to establishing, trust and credibility with the people that you're trying to connect with, is that you should always try to aim to give first before wanting to receive. And that sounds very corny and cheesy, but it's true. Like, if you bring it to the very real example that you suddenly were laid off, and you're trying to reach to people to ask if they may have an opportunity for you, or they can introduce you to someone in their network because they're connected to a job that you're interested in. If you haven't established that relationship before, then it's gonna come out as desperate. It's gonna come out as needy. It's gonna come out as something that, oh, you just came to me because you need a favor from me.
Right.
It doesn't work that way. Like it's not good. You're not going to be successful that way. So you need to establish that relationship and that trust and that credibility way before. And the best way to do that is when you can help others, right? So I always say the best time to network is when you're comfortable in your job, when you have a steady paycheck, you're not thinking about moving, you love the company you're with, and you have some spare time to help others. That is the best time to really invest and go all in networking, because you're always going to be able to give more than receive. And always, think about it long term, like that you're going to continue to build this, and you're probably not going to receive anything in so
Uh-huh.
many years, and hopefully you never need it. But when the time comes and you need it, then that relationship is going to be established, and that you're going to be recognized as someone that was always there, not just
Mhm.
as a need. So that is something that I think it's super important too. um and I feel like probably those are the two key things that have really worked for me.
Absolutely. Wow. Thank you for sharing. Those are really insightful and kind of just a different way of thinking about networking. I've never really particularly framed it that way in my mind, even though that, makes so much sense because I, just like you said, like I'm doing really well in my career. I'm super happy. I love my company. And I'm building my audience very actively on LinkedIn and doing a lot of things to propel that forward. And it feels great. And I feel very comfortable. But then I do also think, like, let's say my company shut down tomorrow. Like, I think I'd be okay. Like I have a network and I don't want to have to ask them for anything because like you said, you when you have it available to give, that feels so much better. And that's really an intentional way of thinking about networking too.
Yeah, 100%. And again, you never know what's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So that's why you always you have to you have to um you have to stay ready, so you don't have to get ready.
Hmm. Totally. Yeah. And really smart advice about setting aside just your hour for lunch break every week. I mean, that is kind of a lot to sacrifice, but it sounds like it's been so worth it for you and really paid
and
off in a lot of ways.
and it's something that at the end of the day you look forward to. For me, it's Fridays, it
Yeah.
could be whatever, but it's always good to look forward to that at the end of the week. It's a time where I know that I need to get a bigger breakfast, but like I also look forward to a nice dinner with family. So it's something that maybe in the beginning, just like anything else, like if you have to start going to the gym, and then at the beginning, it's very hard to do, but then it just becomes second nature, and it's something that if you integrate it in your routine, and the way that you go about things, it's now it's something that I kind of need, right?
Yeah.
And and yeah, as you said, it is worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really awesome. Well, is there anything else specifically that you'd like to share, kind of about your journey with starting the group, or what's been really impactful about it for you, or anything that maybe you've learned in the process?
Um, so I think that the main thing that I've learned is that, again, sounds very cheesy, but you need people, like, to do anything. Like, one of the things someone asked me one time, like, what is your biggest pet peeve in the professional world? And something that I really hate seeing is when people say that they single-handedly did something. And I'm like, really? Like, um, I feel like in the professional world, and in particular in the work that we do as communicators, marketers, we work with such um, uh, it's so important for us to build relationships and understand people at the more basic human level, and that it's something that definitely need to be prioritized. A lot of times, um, we think that we can go about our journeys, professional journeys, and everything is just depending on you. Like you can achieve whatever you want, but really you always need people to do that.
Mhm.
So cultivating those relationships and making sure that you're planting seeds that you can then water, grow, and get fruit in the long term is so important. And that is something that I always, especially now that we're in time of graduations and talking to so many that are going to get into the world of work in the coming weeks. I always tell them like this is the best time for you to start that journey. Like a lot of people start later in their lives when they realize suddenly that they need that network, right? But the best time, it's really when you're early in your career, when you have all the time and energy to learn and connect with people. So dedicate time to do that. I promise you, it's gonna pay off, and it's also gonna be so fulfilling for you, not just professionally but personally.
Yeah, yeah, that's beautiful and awesome. Awesome words of wisdom. I really appreciate that. And I think my listeners will too. Thank you so much, Daniel, for joining today. This has been an awesome chat. Any closing thoughts before we sign off?
No, I mean, thank you so much for having me. Great conversation. I hope it's helpful to your audience, and always happy to connect with anyone on LinkedIn or in my other platforms.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll link all of your things in the show notes for everyone. And thank you so much again for joining today.
Thank you.